AP Algebra 2, Unit 1, Domain and Range. Please refer to your reference pages of your textbook as well as the definition of the vocabulary terms below in completing the notes section of this particular lesson. Begin by filling in the definitions of these four terms and use the rest of the definitions to help you understand the next 5 examples. We'll be using interval notation, set notation, and roster notation to express the domain and range of each of the following functions. Continuous, discrete, and discontinuous functions are listed in each of the next 5 examples. Interval notation is a way of describing the domain and range of a function using brackets and parentheses. The brackets denote included values, parentheses denote excluded values. So in our first example, the domain is negative infinity to positive infinity. Remember that infinity is an excluded value, therefore you will be using parentheses and not brackets. The range of this function begins at the number 1 and continues to positive infinity. Now the bracket is represented here because the line is included at the point -1. Set notation, you will be using symbols, and one particular symbol that you can use to describe a continuous function where there are no breaks from negative infinity to positive infinity is all real numbers. And your range is going to be denoted by y, and therefore filled in with y must be greater than or equal to 1. You will close that in using brackets. Roster notation is not used in this particular function because roster notation is used in discrete functions only. Example, filling in these values here for both f of 2 equals blank and what values of x does f of x equals 2 describe. F of x is function notation. In this particular example, x equals 2. Therefore, when x equals 2, y equals 5. F of x equals 2. Remember, in function notation, f of x is simply y. So when y equals 2, what does x equal? In this particular case, x is 2 separate values, both -1 and +1. Example number 2 is an example of a discrete set of values. Interval notation is not used because interval notation is used only in continuous and discontinuous functions, not discrete. Set notation, we denote x as the domain, and we will list from least to greatest your points in the discrete function. -4, 1, 17/2, and 12. Close in your brackets. Again, with your range, denote y, and from least to greatest, noting you will not write the number 7 twice. Roster notation is identical without the denote x and y values. -4, 1, 7. Oops, sorry about that. We left out 7 in that prior list. Make sure to put that in there. 7, 17/2, and 12. Here your range is going to be -2, 4, 7, and 13. Example number 3. In this particular graph, you're given a discontinuous function, and interval notation will represent that discontinuous discontinuous function with two separate intervals in the domain. Your first interval begins at -6 and continues to the open circle or the hole, which is at 2. You'll pick up the next interval on the right side of that hole, so again at 2, and you will continue on to infinity because there's an arrow on the end of that. Now the range contains no break because this line covers up the hole there, because all of these values are represented in the range, although that open circle is there as well. A way of looking at that is by saying that the points on the horizontal line next to the hole cover up the hole. Set notation, you will use X, denote your domain using X, and then use your symbols to describe it. X is greater than or equal to 6, and please remember to say that X cannot equal 2. Y value, there is no such exclusion, therefore it's going to be your -5 is less than Y, which is less than 7. Less than or equal to 7. Roster notation is not used because roster notation is only used on discrete functions only. F of 2, move your X value to 2, and notice that that is the place where the hole or the open circle is. Therefore, for this function, that is undefined. For what value is f of x equal 1? Well, remember f of x equals y, so when y equals 1, what is the value of x? That's a single value, this time -2. Example number 4, again we have a discontinuous function because of the two open circles here. Interval notation will use those holes as the breaks in the interval. So you'll begin your first one at -8. You will continue to the first hole at -5. You will pick up that on the other side or the right side of the hole, -5, and continue to the end of the line, which is also an open circle, making it parentheses as well. Your range is going to be from -3 to +1, and remember, because both of the values at +1 are open circles, they are not included. Your set notation, please denote X for your domain, and then we'll use our inequalities to create our domain and range. -8 is less than or equal to X, which is less than 3. And please recall that X cannot equal -5. Y, and we will do the same, -3 less than or equal to Y, which is less than 1. Roster notation is not used because roster notation is only used to describe discrete functions. F of x, f of 2, so when x equals 2, what is y? 0. F of x, remember f of x is y, so when y equals -1, that's here. The value or values at that point are -3 and +1. Finally, example number 5, interval notation. You'll begin at the left, which is at -5, and you will continue all the way to the right, which is at +3. Now, in this particular case, you'll notice that this step function shows no overlap in one step to the next, because one step has the closed circle, the other has the open circle. There's no overlap. However, what you do see is there are no gaps either. Therefore, you start at -5 with an open circle, and you continue all the way to +3 with a closed circle. That is the reason for the parentheses and the bracket. The range is -3 all the way to +4. +6. Set notation is going to begin at -5. Denote your domain by using your x value. -5 less than x, which is less than or equal to +3. There will be no excluded values because of the nature of the relationship between the open and the closed circle. Y value begins at -3, less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 6. Roster notation again is not used because this is not a discrete function. This is a discontinuous function. F of -1, so that means when x is -1. So I'll move over here to x equals -1, therefore y equals 0. It is not the open circle that we use, it is the closed circle. F of x equals 0. Well, when f of x equals 0, that's when y equals 0. You're looking at a interval of numbers between -3 and -1. So I will say -3 to 1 is the list of numbers that satisfy